He was 65 years old, broke, alone, and forgotten by the world. Most people at that age are thinking about retirement, about slowing down, about the comfort of the end. But this man was about to begin his life's greatest fight. A fight not against the world, but against time, against doubt, and against that little voice that whispers, "You're too late." This is the story of Colonel Harland Sanders, the man who failed over 1,000 times before creating one of the most famous brands in history, Kentucky Fried Chicken. It as the story of a man who proved that dreams don't come with an expiration date, and that persistence is stronger than any obstacle. Harland Sanders was born in 1890 in Henryville, Indiana. His father died when he was only 6. His mother, left alone with 3 children, worked long hours just to keep food on the table. At that young age, Harland had no choice but to step up. He began cooking for his younger siblings, learning how to fry, bake, and prepare meals with whatever little they had. In that small kitchen, on a wood-burning stove, he discovered something that would one day change his destiny. But back then, it was just survival. Life didn't go easy on him. At 10, he was working on a farm. At 16, he lied about his age to join the army. At 17, he was discharged. He worked as a streetcar conductor, a railroad fireman, an insurance salesman, a ferry boat operator, even a tire salesman, and he failed at nearly all of them. Every time he tried something new, life threw him back to zero. But here's the thing about people who eventually win. They don't count their failures. They count their attempts. He didn't stop. He kept moving. He kept believing that somehow, somewhere, something would click. In his 30s, Sanders ran a small service station in Corbin, Kentucky. There, between changing tires and fueling cars, he began cooking meals for travelers who stopped by. He served them in the back of his station on a small dining table, and people loved it. His fried chicken became famous in the area. He didn't have fancy ads, he didn't have a restaurant, just a man, a pan, and a whole lot of passion. Word of mouth spread. Soon, people were driving from miles away just to taste that chicken. He opened a small restaurant, built a reputation, and began to believe that maybe, finally, this was it. For years, things went well. He was even recognized by the governor of Kentucky for his contribution to local cuisine, and was given the honorary title of Colonel. But then, everything fell apart again. A new interstate highway was built, and it bypassed his restaurant completely. The traffic that once kept his business alive was gone overnight. Within months, his restaurant closed. He lost almost everything. At 65, Harland Sanders was broke. He was living on a small pension check, $105 a month. That was it. No savings, no business, no hope if you were looking from the outside. Most people at that point would have said, "It's over." But he didn't. He refused to let failure be his final chapter. One day, sitting in his small house, he looked at that check in his hand and decided, "I'm not done yet." He believed his fried chicken recipe was special. He believed it could still change his life. So he made a decision that most people would call crazy. He packed up his car with a pressure cooker, some cooking utensils, and a bag of his secret seasoning. Then he hit the road. At 65 years old, he started traveling across America, sleeping in his car, stopping at diners, restaurants, and cafes, offering to cook his fried chicken for the owners. If they liked it, he asked for a simple deal. "Use my recipe and give me a small percentage of the profits." That's it. Simple, fair. But almost every door he knocked on closed. Restaurant owners told him no. They said his idea was foolish. They said he was too old. Some laughed, some didn't even listen. But he kept going. 10 rejections, 50, 100, 500, 800, 1,000, and still, no. Most people can't handle 10 rejections. Imagine hearing no 1,009 times. Every no hurts. Every no plants a seed of doubt. Every no makes you question your own worth. But Colonel Sanders kept going, because deep down he knew something powerful. Rejection doesn't define your dream. Your reaction to it does. Finally, after 1,009 rejections, one restaurant owner said, "Yes." One yes, out of 1,000 no's, and that one yes changed everything. In 1952, the first Kentucky Fried Chicken franchise was born. It wasn't fancy, it wasn't fast, but it was real. It was made with heart. Soon, more restaurants joined. People couldn't get enough of that crispy golden chicken. The secret recipe of 11 herbs and spices became legendary. By the early 1960s, KFC had exploded across the country. Within a decade, it was global. Colonel Sanders became the face of the brand. His white suit, his black string tie, his warm smile, all symbols of resilience and success. He wasn't a businessman in the traditional sense. He was a dreamer who refused to quit. By the time he sold the company in 1964 for $2 million, he was 74 years old. Think about that. Most people are done at 65, but Sanders was just getting started. He built an empire in his 70s. That's not luck. That's persistence. That's grit. That's belief. And that's the lesson his story teaches the world. You're never too old to start again. You're never too late to chase a dream. You're never too broken to rebuild. Sanders once said, "I made a resolve that I'd have to be on the lookout for my opportunity, and when it came, I'd be ready." And when it came, he was. He didn't let his age be an excuse. He didn't let failure be a prison. He turned rejection into motivation. He turned pain into purpose. And in doing so, he fed not just millions of people, but millions of souls. Because his story reminds us all. Success is not about age, it's about attitude. It's not about how fast you start, it's about how long you can keep going. When people told him, "You're too old," he said, "Maybe for you, but not for me." When they said, "It's over," he said, "No, it's just beginning." He failed 1,000 times, but he only needed one yes. That's the truth about life. The world doesn't need to believe in you. You just need to believe in yourself long enough for the world to notice. Sometimes it takes years. Sometimes it takes decades. But if you stay hungry, if you keep moving, if you keep showing up even when no one is clapping for you, your time will come. Colonel Sanders could have retired quietly. He could have accepted a life of comfort and regret. But he chose fire. He chose to fight. And that choice changed everything. Every person watching this needs to understand. Your age, your past, your failures, none of them define your future. You define it. You decide when it's over. You decide when it begins again. The Colonel didn't have investors. He didn't have social media. He didn't have luck. He had drive. He had discipline. He had the courage to knock on one more door when the world had already slammed 1,000 in his face. That's what greatness looks like. So, if you're listening to this and you feel like life has passed you by, if you think you're too late, if you've been rejected, forgotten, or ignored, remember him. Remember that old man in a white suit who refused to quit. Remember the man who turned one yes into a billion-dollar legacy. Because that same spirit lives in you. You might not be frying chicken, but you're cooking something. An idea, a dream, a vision. And if you keep working, if you keep believing, one day the world will taste what you've been creating. The message is this: it's never too late to start over. Never too late to reinvent yourself. Never too late to rise again. Colonel Sanders didn't just create a brand. He created a symbol of hope. His story isn't about chicken. It's about second chances. It's about faith when everything tells you to quit. It's about never letting rejection stop you from becoming who you're meant to be. He failed more times than most people ever try, but he proved that if you just keep knocking, eventually the door will open. And when it does, you'll realize every no was just preparing you for the yes that changes everything. So whatever dream you've buried under doubt, dig it up. Whatever excuse you've been living with, throw it away. You're not too old. You're not too late. You're not finished. You're just getting started. Remember the Colonel? Remember the struggle and remember the fire that kept him going at 65 years old when most people would have given up. Let that story remind you. You can start over at any age, at any stage, at any moment. As long as you're breathing, it's never too late to begin again. Because sometimes the greatest success stories begin right after everyone else stops trying. Thank you for watching. If this story inspired you, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more stories that matter. See you next time.